Emma's hands trembled as she clutched the pregnancy test, those two pink lines changing everything. She never expected to be standing here, in the doorway of her neighbor's apartment, about to upend both their lives with three impossible words: "I'm carrying yours." If you're enjoying this emotional journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that explore the unexpected turns life can take. Your support means everything. The hallway light cast shadows across Mark's face as he stared at her, disbelief etching lines around his eyes that had already seen too much heartbreak. "You're pregnant, it's mine?" the single dad asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his 5-year-old daughter sleeping just rooms away. Emma looked at him and said, "Close the door." 3 months earlier, Emma Sullivan had moved into apartment 4B with nothing but 2 suitcases and a broken heart. At 32, she was starting over after walking away from a 10-year relationship that had slowly drained the life from her. The city was supposed to be her fresh start, anonymous, uncomplicated, free. The last thing she wanted was to know her neighbors. Mark Wilson had lived in 4A for 6 years. The first 3 with his wife, Sarah, and their daughter, Lily. The last 3 as a widower raising Lily alone after Sarah's car accident. He kept to himself, his world narrowed to his daughter and his work as an architect he could do from home. Neighbors came and went. He barely noticed. Their first real interaction happened during a thunderstorm that knocked out power to the building. Emma had been fumbling with candles when a soft knock came at her door. Mark stood there, Lily half asleep against his shoulder, a flashlight in his hand. "We have extra batteries," he said simply. "And Lily wanted to make sure you weren't scared of the dark." That night, they sat in his living room by candlelight, Lily eventually falling asleep on the couch while Emma and Mark talked in hushed tones. He told her about Sarah, about the gaping hole her absence had left. Emma shared her own story of slowly realizing she'd been disappearing inside her relationship, becoming someone she didn't recognize. "It's different," she said, "but I understand loss." Their friendship grew cautiously after that. Coffee in the morning when they'd run into each other in the hallway. Mark helping Emma assemble furniture. Emma watching Lily occasionally when Mark's mother, who usually helped with childcare, was unavailable. They were careful, respectful of boundaries. Both too wounded to consider anything more. Until the night of Mark's birthday. His mother had taken Lily for the weekend, insisting he needed to remember he was human. Emma had invited him over for dinner, nothing fancy, just a home-cooked meal and company. 1 bottle of wine became 2. Conversation flowed easier with each glass. When he helped her clear the dishes, their hands touched, and something electric passed between them. "I should go," he said, but didn't move. "You should," she agreed, stepping closer. What followed was a night of passion neither had planned for or expected, tender, desperate, healing in ways they couldn't articulate. In the morning, reality crashed back. Mark's face was pale with regret, not for what had happened, but for the complications it created. "Lily is everything to me," he said, pulling his shirt on. "I can't risk anything that might hurt her." Emma nodded, understanding completely. "We're neighbors. Friends. Last night was beautiful," he finished. But not something we should repeat," she concluded. They agreed to return to their careful friendship, pretending that night never happened. For 6 weeks, they managed it, awkward at first, then settling back into their comfortable rhythm. Until Emma missed her period. Then a second. The pregnancy test confirmed what she already knew in her heart. Now, standing in his apartment with the door closed behind them, Emma felt her carefully constructed new life crumbling. "I'm keeping it," she said before he could speak. "I don't expect anything from you. I just thought you deserved to know." Mark sank onto his couch, running his hands through his hair. "How? We were careful." "Not careful enough, apparently." Emma remained standing, arms crossed protectively over her stomach. "Look, I've thought about this for days. I can move out if that would be easier. Find somewhere else before I start showing. Move out? Mark looked up sharply. Is that what you want? I want. Emma's voice broke. I want not to complicate your life or Lily's. You've been through enough. Mark was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. After Sarah died, I thought I'd never feel anything again except grief and responsibility. Then you moved in next door with your terrible taste in music and your habit of burning popcorn at midnight. Despite everything, Emma smiled. It was only twice. 3 times, he corrected. I counted because each time, I found myself waiting for the smell, for the sound of you cursing. It became part of my day, realizing you were there. He stood up, moving toward her cautiously. I'm not saying this right. I'm terrified, Emma. Terrified of messing up with Lily, of opening our lives to more potential heartbreak. But I'm also terrified of you walking away. What are you saying? Emma whispered. I'm saying don't move out. I'm saying let's figure this out. Together. The months that followed weren't easy. Telling Lily was its own challenge. Mark had prepared carefully, explaining that Miss Emma had a baby growing in her tummy, and that the baby was her little brother or sister. Lily had looked confused. But Miss Emma isn't my mommy. No, sweetheart, Mark had said gently. Your mommy will always be your mommy. But families can look different ways. Like Zoe at school? She has 2 mommies. Something like that. Lily had considered this, then asked the question Mark had been dreading, will Miss Emma live with us now? Emma and Mark had discussed this extensively. Moving in together immediately felt wrong, too much change too quickly for Lily, too much pressure on their still evolving relationship. Instead, they decided to maintain separate apartments for now but spend more time together as a unit. Not right away, Mark answered his daughter. But we'll be spending lots of time together, like a family. Lily had nodded, apparently satisfied. Then, with the directness only children possess, she'd placed her small hand on Emma's still flat stomach and asked, "Can the baby hear me yet?" Emma's parents had been shocked but ultimately supportive. You always did things your own way, her mother had said after the initial surprise wore off. Mark's mother, Helen, had been harder to win over. Sarah's been gone 3 years, she'd said when Mark told her, and suddenly you're having a baby with a woman you barely know? I know her, Mom, Mark had replied firmly. Not in the traditional timeline, maybe, but I know her heart. As Emma's pregnancy progressed, their unconventional arrangement evolved. Emma spent more nights at Mark's apartment than her own. Lily grew attached to the ritual of talking to Emma's growing belly each night, telling her future sibling about her day. Mark found himself reaching for Emma in quiet moments, a hand on the small of her back, fingers intertwined while watching TV after Lily was asleep. They were careful not to label what they were becoming, both still carrying scars from their pasts. But something was growing between them alongside the baby, something tender and hopeful. The 7th month brought complications. Emma's blood pressure spiked dangerously. The doctor ordered bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. Without discussion, Mark moved her things into his apartment. Just until the baby comes, he said, though they both suspected otherwise. Those weeks of forced proximity broke down their final walls. Emma, unable to maintain her usual independence, had to rely on Mark and, surprisingly, Helen, who had gradually warmed to her future grandchild's mother. Mark, seeing Emma vulnerable for the first time, found himself admitting how deeply he'd come to care for her. One night, with Lily asleep and Emma propped up in what had become their bed, Mark sat beside her, his hand resting on her rounded stomach. I never told you why Sarah and I named our daughter Lily, he said quietly. Emma shook her head, sensing the importance of the moment. Sarah loved lilies, said they represented rebirth, the return of happiness. When she got pregnant, she insisted that's what we'd name our daughter, because she would be our greatest joy. His voice caught. After Sarah died, that name felt like both a gift and a burden. A reminder of what we'd lost and what remained. Emma covered his hand with hers. She was right about the joy part. Yes, Mark agreed. And I've been thinking about names for this baby. About what this child represents. And? Emma prompted when he fell silent. Hope, he said simply. This baby is hope. For all of us. 2 weeks later, Emma went into labor 3 weeks early. The delivery was difficult but ultimately successful. Hope Wilson Sullivan entered the world at 3:17 a.m., 7 pounds of screaming, perfect new life. When Lily met her sister for the first time, she approached the hospital bed cautiously. She's so small, she whispered. You were this small once too, Mark told her, lifting her up to see better. Can I touch her? Emma nodded, adjusting the blanket so Lily could gently stroke the baby's cheek. What do you think, Lily? Is she a good sister? Lily considered this seriously. She's our family, she declared finally, with the certainty only a child could possess. Later, when they were alone with the sleeping newborn, Mark took Emma's hand. Move in permanently, he said. Not because of convenience or the baby. Because I love you. Because somehow, in the middle of this beautiful mess, we found something I never thought I'd have again. Emma looked at him, tears in her eyes. Are you sure? This isn't how either of us planned our lives. The best things rarely are, he replied. Sarah taught me that life is unpredictable and sometimes unbearably short. I don't want to waste any more time pretending we're just neighbors who happen to have a child together. 6 months later, they stood in their apartment, now officially theirs, as Emma had let her lease expire, surrounded by friends and family. Hope was passed from arms to arms, growing fussier as the evening wore on. Lily proudly showed off her role as big sister, demonstrating to anyone who would watch how she could make the baby smile. As the party wound down, Mark pulled Emma aside. Come with me for a minute. He led her to the hallway outside, positioning her between apartments 4A and 4B. This is where it all started, he said. You, standing at my door with news that changed everything. Emma smiled, remembering her terror that night. I was so scared. Me too, he admitted. But here's the thing about doors, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. They're meant to be opened. Emma's hand flew to her mouth as he dropped to one knee. I'm not asking because of hope or because it's convenient, he said, opening the box to reveal a simple solitaire ring. I'm asking because loving you has taught me that second chances come in unexpected packages. Emma Sullivan, will you marry me? Through tears, Emma nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes. As Mark slipped the ring onto her finger, the door to 4A opened. Lily stood there in her pajamas, Helen visible behind her with Hope in her arms. Did she say yes, Daddy? Lily asked anxiously. Mark laughed, pulling Emma close. She said yes, sweetheart. Lily cheered, running to wrap her arms around both of them. Helen approached more slowly, the baby gurgling in her arms. Sarah would approve, she said quietly to Mark. She'd want this for you. For Lily. Mark felt Emma's hand tighten in his, understanding the weight of Helen's words. Thank you, he said to his mother. Later that night, with both girls finally asleep, Emma and Mark stood in the doorway of Hope's nursery, watching their younger daughter's peaceful breathing. When I moved in here, I was running away from my past, Emma whispered. I never imagined I was actually running toward my future. Mark wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Sometimes the best stories begin when we close one door, he murmured, only to find another one opening. Emma turned in his arms, pressing her forehead to his. I'm glad I told you to close the door that night. Me too, he said, kissing her softly. Me too. Their story wasn't perfect. It hadn't followed any conventional path. But standing there in the quiet of their home, surrounded by the family they'd created from unexpected circumstances, they knew it was exactly where they were meant to be. Sometimes life's greatest gifts arrive in packages we never ordered, at times we never planned for. But in the end, it's not about the timing or the packaging, it's about having the courage to open the door when opportunity knocks, even when, especially when, it terrifies us. And as Mark and Emma had learned, sometimes the most beautiful beginnings start with 4 simple words: close the door behind you.